Let me thank you for convening the hearing to review U.S. policy towards Mexico and Central America. This is an incredibly important hearing, which comes at a time when I believe the President is engaged in a calculated attempt to aggravate regional migration dynamics for domestic political gain at the expense of our national security. Since taking office, the President has systematically worked to politicize the U.S. immigration system and polarize Americans on this issue. In 2017, the President sought to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals DACA program, a merciless decision that would have led to the deportation of more than 822,000 individuals who arrived to the United States as children. In 2018, the administration cruelly separated more than 2,814 immigrant children from their families. In 2017, 2018, and 2019, the Trump administration lowered the number of refugees the United States would welcome to this nation, tarnishing our moral leadership and our historic role as a beacon of light for persecuted people. In the same vein, the administration's foreign policy decisions that we will review today appear to be intentionally aimed at fueling regional instability and deliberately designed to leave people in harm's way. In May, President Trump took the unprecedented step of threatening Mexico, our second largest export market, our third largest trading partner, with the equivalent of escalating economic sanctions if their government didn't take his definition of additional steps to address regional migration. To prevent the potentially disastrous blow to the United States and Mexican economies that the president's temper tantrum might have unleashed, U.S. and Mexican negotiating teams scrambled to cobble together an agreement that barely passes the legal laugh test. For 6 weeks after it was signed, the administration could not tell us whether the U.S.-Mexico joint declaration was legally binding under international law, and still cannot tell us whether the government of Mexico views it as legally binding. In late July, the U.S. signed a so-called safe third country agreement with Guatemala, with the intention of sending desperate asylum seekers back to Guatemala if they didn't file an asylum application while passing through that country before arriving at the U.S. border. This must be the Trump administration's twisted attempt at a joke. With one of the highest homicide rates in the world, the Guatemalan government cannot even protect its own citizens. Guatemala's obvious lack of capacity to carry out this agreement will only fuel more regional instability. Just last Friday, the U.S. signed a similar agreement with El Salvador. Given that El Salvador has recently held the title of, quote, the world's murder capital, any agreement to send asylum seekers back to El Salvador is incredibly disturbing. So, Mr. Chairman, while I appreciate the spirit in which you worked with me to set up today's hearing, I would note that to this day, despite your best efforts, the administration still refuses to provide us with complete copies of all of the agreements and arrangements that they are signing with Central American governments in relation to migration. There is no justification for withholding this information from Congress and from the American people, other than this administration does not want the public to know what it's doing in the name of the United States. Now, I suppose it's no surprise that DHS is missing in action today. They did not bother showing up to even try to defend the administration's policies. We do know, however, that the administration has expanded implementation of its deceptively named migrant protection protocols along the entire U.S.-Mexico border. Under this abhorrent policy, the U.S. is pushing asylum seekers, including pregnant women and families with children, back over the border into some of Mexico's most violent cities to await adjudication of their asylum claims. Since the policy's inception in January, we have seen asylum seekers facing terrifying violence and tragedy. These decisions have consequences. No one at today's hearing should ever forget the photo of Oscar Alberto Martinez Ramirez and his 23-month-old daughter, Valeria, who drowned on the banks of the Rio Grande after they were unable to enter the United States at a port of entry to file their asylum claim. Further fueling this instability, in March, President Trump personally announced cuts to U.S. foreign assistance to El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, one of the most important tools that we have to defend our national interests and address the factors driving migration to the U.S. Seems that the president likes to use foreign assistance in political ways very often. This is a self-inflicted wound to our national security. While this, by the way, monies that were certified by the Secretary of State on several occasions to have been effective in pursuit of the policies that we were seeking. While the administration has decided to go forward with limited funding for DHS and Justice Department initiatives, the White House has forced the State Department to reprogram $450 million in funding that was appropriated by Congress. Congress made clear through the FY 2018 appropriations omnibus that these funds should have gone to programs to improve the rule of law, combat drug trafficking and criminal gangs, professionalize local law enforcement, advance economic development, and strengthen the migration systems that will be overwhelmed by the administration's new asylum agreements. Instead, we find ourselves without the necessary funds to address challenges in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. I think every member of this committee should be asking whether the administration is intentionally trying to destabilize Central America in order to fuel more chaos at the U.S. border. With that in mind, I thank our witnesses for appearing today. I'm going to have some very critical questions, and I look forward to your honest testimony and response. Thank you.